Hey, so we are going to be talking about the movie Malignant today. This movie has the reveals, it's wild shit. So if you haven't seen Malignant yet, this is one time where we will definitely say, do not listen to this podcast without having watched Malignant first. You do not want to spoil this stuff for yourself. It's crazy. Go watch it. Come back. What do you do when you're a surgeon who's having trouble removing a parasitic twin from your patient's head? You just kind of stuff its face into the patient's brain, seal up the skull, and hope for the best. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Nerdy 430, the podcast where comedian Tim Keck and I nerd out about topics for about 30 minutes. Today we're talking about Malignant. By that intro line alone, you can probably tell this is going to be the grisliest, goriest movie that we've talked about so far. This is a gross movie, but I think it's a ton of fun. Tim, what did you think?
Kevin Bauer, thank you for that. I like this movie a lot. I thought it was awesome. I'm going to go so far as to recommend, I never say this before our podcasts, but if you are looking for a fun, new, cool, gross horror movie to watch, stop listening to this podcast and watch it right now. There's a lot of movies that I honestly think you could listen to our podcast and be like, you know what? After listening to this, I'd like to watch this movie. It's not the same. I feel like knowing what's going to happen in this movie is going to take away from it so much. So put this down, go watch this movie and come back. I thought it was great. I had such a good time watching it. It is not what I thought it was going to be. I was entirely dissuaded by the cover photo on HBO. I was so deterred by the cover art because it's a woman with her eyeball right under a dripping M. It's a point. It looks like it's going into her eye. I am like, this is not the kind of horror movie that I like. I don't need anything going into people's eyes. Eyes are gushy and soft. That's too close to home. Home being my brain. I am not into this. I do not want any part of it. No, thank you. And then you were like, no, you should watch it. It's cool. It's trippy. I read the little description. I'm like, okay, I think that's enough. I'll tell you what, even the description on the HBO thing was too much information. I should have had no information at all, and it would have been a cooler, twistier movie. Still cool, still twisty, still had a good time watching it. I mean, I had a blast. Kevin, what did you think of this movie?
This is exactly what I look for. Maybe I shouldn't say exactly. This is really, fuck it. This is exactly what I look for in a horror movie. It's a good ass time. It's like a roller coaster. The thing that I considered to have fully indoctrinated me into horror fandom was that there was a night where I went through a bad breakup in college and I came back to my apartment. I was very sad. I was texting with a couple friends. They were like, you know what? We need to go out tonight. It's 10 p.m. We're like, what's going on tonight? We end up seeing that there is a midnight showing. It's the premiere of Paranormal Activity 2 that same night. So we're like, this will be great. It'll get my mind off things. I'll get all scared. It'll be fun. We go to the campus movie theater to see it, and it was full of drunk frat and sorority people. And Paranormal Activity 2 in that theater, seriously, like a roller coaster. People were standing up in the aisles and walking around. People are screaming, oh my God. Everybody's cringing and moving around in their seats. And that's what I was doing watching this movie Home Alone on an iPad. It was a blast. I was screaming at the iPad. I mean, it's so much fucking fun.
Kevin, I'm sorry you got dumped once.
Never again, Tim. Once, but never again. Dude, this movie. So, I mean, the reason I was a little bit apprehensive to call it exactly what I'm looking for in a horror movie is that this is not a scary movie. This is a creepy movie. It's an eerie movie. I would say it's more of a thriller than an outright horror movie. There are definitely like horror type sequences. I mean, this is James Wan. This is horror royalty making this movie. But it's not as scary as I would have liked it to be, but I'm going to let it slide on this one because it's just the energy that this fucking movie brings. It's just a blast. This is an all-time great screening of a movie at a bar flick, right?
Yeah, this is in the weird genre. This is almost exactly the kind of horror movie I love too, where it's I love a slasher. because I like action. At the end of the day, I like action. I want to be scared. I want to be excited. And it does all those things. It does the scare. You're right. It's not super scary. There's enough like tension and suspense in it. And the shots, like the way this movie shot is crazy. Like the directing,
my God, dude.
The directing makes this movie in a way that I don't think I've seen any of these other James Wan movies like make sense. It's shot like a Fast and Furious movie. It's crazy. Some of the music cues, I'm like, what the hell is going on right now? They just start playing some random song. They cut away from things. Lines that should have no weight somehow have immense weight. And I'm like, this is a directorial trick. Like there's one where this woman's like, I was actually adopted. And then they're like, what? And then the music like comes in and it's like, then they just cut away to shots of the city. Like this is the end of the world or whatever. And I'm just like, what is happening? But there's so many shots where it's like her going to a different room and suddenly we're on top of the room looking down and we're like following her. It's shot like a Fast and Furious movie. And it's crazy. I mean, it adds a whole new element to this film and this genre in general, you know?
The effects in this thing are fucking incredible. The effect of like kind of the room just dissolving away from her and her showing up in a new room. I mean, it's nuts. The camera trick where you kind of like sweep all around the room too. There were a few camera tricks in this movie, I guess you would call them, where I was genuinely trying to figure out how they did it. Like how the hell they could have that much coverage of that room. I don't know, man. What a fucking blast. I'm going to get right into it. I got a when did you know? Let's just start it right up. When did you know that Gabriel was Voldemorting on the back of Madison's head?
I didn't know until they said that. I mean, I don't know how we could have known that that's what it was, that she was like some weird symbiotic twin or parasitic. There was a parasitic twin. I mean, such a good twist. I was thinking it was her kid. That's what I was thinking of the whole time. I'm like, this is her son. Somehow they got separated because she's older. She's like way older. Maybe she had a kid, and something about the fact that his birth was so violent was the reason she was having so many miscarriages or something like that. Like, I don't know.
That's dope.
I thought they were related the whole time. The idea of them actually basically being the same person, I thought was very weird and interesting.
It was insane.
It was crazy.
There's so much shit going on in this movie where it's like all the electricity stuff with Gabriel. The clip that you see the first time you get a glimpse of Gabriel in the very beginning of the movie definitely got me hooked early on. All of the shit with her, with the miscarriages, Gabriel moving around, the basement, the woman that Gabriel kidnaps. Like I said, the scenes where it dissolves away and she can see what Gabriel is doing. There are so many different things that seem to be completely disconnected early in the movie that in a great way, you just spend the entire first two acts of the movie going, how the fuck can all this possibly be related? Like, it's amazing.
It is amazing. You mentioned the electrical powers. What did you think of the electrical powers? Were they necessary? Did this guy need electrical powers? It added cool horror elements, but it felt like a hat on a hat to me a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, that was one note that I had, that the electricity stuff, I think, is James Wan being used to working with demons and ghosts, where it's just easy to dismiss. Oh, yeah, it can cut out all the lights to the house because it's a ghost. It's just super convenient to have a character be able to cut all the lights out in a horror movie. I'll let it go just because this movie's a fucking blast. You know, if this weren't as much fun as it is.
It's so cool. In hindsight, it makes it. I think that's the knock against the movie for me, maybe, is just like the power. I mean, it's so cool, but it's like the thing. Anytime like powers are introduced, I'm like, so where's the rest of them? Is there anybody else with powers in this movie? It's like, well, we just talked about Venom, you know, maybe a tiny spoiler alert for Venom. There's one character in it that has powers, and we meet no other human beings in this world that have powers. And the idea of just one person having powers to me never makes any sense when it's so casually discussed. Like, especially when these guys are being like kept hostage in some like underground bunker where they're being experimented on or whatever. You're telling me there aren't other people in there with like weird powers and weird shit going on? Like, there's got to be something else. Throw me a bigger bone with this, you know?
Yeah, it's what you do. You put them in a secure facility with other people like them so that when a breakout happens, it's a great special effects scene for everybody to break out and kill a bunch of guards and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. A Batman graphic novel. That's what I'm expecting for all these prison scenes.
I've got, speaking of keeping you guessing the entire time, I've got a little variation on When Did You Know called Don't Try to Tell Me That You Knew, where there is a twist that is so crazy that there is no fucking way that you can try to tell me you saw this coming. Don't try to tell me that you knew that Serena May, the woman kidnapped from the Seattle Underground, was Madison's mom. And don't try to tell me that you knew that Serena May was in the fucking attic of Madison's house. That reveal when she falls through the floors, holy fucking shit.
Dude, just another time during this movie that my mouth was just hanging open. I'm like, it was so cool and so good and just such a crazy moment. And like, I mean, there is a moment, because they do plant the seed where you're like, oh, the bad guy is also the lead character. Like, you must have done this. You knew about this. We're accusing you of this. And for a moment, I was thinking that. And then they somehow convinced me, like, no, this is separate, because this person is so believable. This person has no idea that they would be doing this. Like, the lead in this movie is like very convincing as like an innocent person. And so I started to believe her the second I'm really all in, like, okay, she's having this traumatic flashback, whatever. Body comes crashing through the ceiling. It turns out this was in her house. Even then, I don't think I made the connection that it was still her. I was like, holy shit, this evil villain has been staying in her house. Like, the thought of a bad guy just invading her space is so much. It was even scarier to me than the idea that it's her. But yeah, God, it's so fun, man. So cool. Gosh. I gotta win.
Oh yeah, hit me.
No, if you were gonna say something about that, go for it.
Oh no, it's just, I mean, it's fucking brilliant. It's so scary that this thing. There was a horror movie, I forget what the name is, that came out a while back about the concept of it's called frogging. It's apparently like a real thing among psychopaths, where the whole premise is that you try to stay in someone's house without them knowing about it. Like, you basically try to like live in somebody's closet. There's a whole horror movie about it, with like the most notable thing about the movie is that it has a really scary like frog mask that the person is wearing. But the idea that the villain is frogging in your house, I mean, it's so fucking cool. God damn.
I had no idea frogging was a thing, but if I have to think of like literally the scariest thing in the world, it's frogging. It's the idea that someone is in your space is, I think, like the scariest thing about horror, you know, is that your safe space has been invaded. And every horror movie or every like scary thing is just a variation of that, right? Like, a psychopath is invading your space, a ghost is invading your space, a spirit is invading your space, your demonic twin who's been shoved inside your head, you know, is invading your space.
Oh my God. We got to keep going because I want to talk about that moment so bad. What's your When Did You Know?
Okay, my When Did You Know? Kevin, when did you know that you're adopted? Because I think, you know, I mean, I think we're still a little young to find out. I think late 30s is usually when you reveal to your siblings that you were adopted. I thought it was the adoption reveal. I was like, is so weird. I'm like, why are we watching 30 somethings have a conversation about like a reveal that they were adopted? Like, that seems crazy to me. Is there such a stigma around this adoption that like the sister isn't allowed to know that her sister is adopted? Like, how does that not come up? You got to have conversations about that. I don't know. I don't know. It just seemed very random to me that was like, how has this not been revealed?
There's nothing that's more intrusive than the idea that an adopted person has been invading your family this whole time.
God, yeah. And she's just in her obsession with like a blood relative. And then her sister doesn't understand that because like, I don't have any blood. It just rubbed me as weird. It just seemed like very late in life to be having these revelations. I mean, I'm not in that situation, so maybe who am I to judge? But it seemed a little lazy to me that the writing wise, that these things that I think in a normal situation everybody would already know. For some reason it felt like that needed to be presented as like brand new information. Like it needed to be a reveal to the characters, not just us. And I think that's like in general a good idea. I think that's a good writing instinct, but I don't think it necessarily makes that much sense. But I mean, whatever. I'm nitpicking this movie that's very fun and awesome. But I thought that was weird to me.
No, I think you're dead on. It needs to be a reveal. It can't be a reveal to a side character. It's got to be a reveal to everybody, like you said, or at the very least to like the detective, who I would say is one of the main protagonists. Like I would say the detective is more of a protagonist than the sister in this. And because of the nature of, the detective researching Madison in her past, I think a reveal to him that she was adopted might have still packed that same punch. But again, this movie is built on, it's exactly like you said, it's built on giving weight to lines that otherwise would not have that weight. It's a masterstroke of directing that's just a blast. I wrote down a line, I'm paraphrasing this here. My favorite line in this movie is this part where the detective is going through and he has a revelation that he says out loud at his desk that's along the lines of, "Oh my God, the daughter was the doctor's patient." It's just so generic. But it's incredible.
And I loved it. I mean, honestly, he directed Fast 7, like one of the Fast and Furious movies. The same thing could be said about the dialogue in Fast and Furious, where it's like Dom just says like family is everything. And somehow my heart is beating out of my chest. And I'm like, yes, family is everything. And I'm ready to run through a wall for these fictional characters. It felt like the same way, the same directing style. I mean, we're going to be doing It Follows in a couple of weeks on this podcast. Another horror movie that I think is fascinating and very good. And I was obviously comparing and contrasting the two a little bit in my mind, and just crazy different approaches to directing horror. Like the speed at which this movie cuts and moves is fascinating and like just feels very modern. Whereas like It Follows like lingers on shot, and that seems like a very more traditional, like, like lingering on shots, long shots, like building suspense that way. And this somehow builds suspense with like all these cuts and tension. I mean, it's fascinating. It's so good.
Dude, it's weird you mentioned the speed too, because this is the first time I've ever felt myself. I clicked on the screen, and before I even knew what I was doing, I had clicked on the screen and looked for like a playback speed button, because I wanted to play this movie at 1.5 times speed, just because I wanted to find out what was going to happen faster. Like it's a very fast paced movie, but it's like it is delivering on what it does so much that it's just, I wanted more of it while I was watching it. It was, I don't know. There was just, I made a note of that because I've never had that instinct before. Let's move into Beefs and Thieves. You got any beefs, Tim?
I don't know if this is really a beef, but this is definitely a discussion we should have, is like the movement of the bad guy.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
It's fascinating and simultaneously like thrilling and awesome and such good action. And at the same time, I don't understand it at all. And maybe that's like good. Maybe we're not supposed to understand it, but the body is doing things that I'm like, I don't understand how this is possible. And it's very jarring. There's a scene where the villain is running from the police, and I swear the feet are pointed forward and the torso is like turned around, but they're facing forward. But then you see them later and it's clearly the back of her head that's opening up. So like, yeah. She's running backwards, but I'm like, but that doesn't track like what I've seen her. That it was like confusing to me, but also super cool. So like, who cares? But I don't know. It was weird.
Dude, we had the same exact beef. I am so enamored with the decision that they made that Gabriel just operates her body, but backwards, that the inconsistencies when they show Gabriel moving frustrated me even more because I just wanted to see them commit to the idea that this is Gabriel's superpower is basically that he is backwards. And like, I just wanted to continue seeing that. There are early shots. The first time that I suspected something was up is because you would see Gabriel putting gloves on, but they were upside down. And I was like, why the fuck is this dude's hands? Or why the fuck are this guy's hands upside down? Like, what's the deal here? And it's because, it's her body, but backwards. And yeah, when you see movement and stuff, there's definitely a point in the movie where you see joints like snap and bend the opposite direction, which I guess is maybe necessary to pull off certain things that they wanted to pull off. But there are absolutely scenes. I noticed the same exact scene that you did where it showed him running. And for some reason, his legs weren't backwards anymore. And it was like, you gotta go whole hog on this, man. He's got to be backwards the whole time because that is so much fun.
Maybe he was running backwards. Like maybe she was facing forwards when he was running from the car. But then even that, it's like, God. Then he's running backwards. Like it's it's weird. I feel like, but maybe if we see the feet pointing back when they're running, that's like a reveal. Maybe that's too much of a reveal that early. It's just weird, but like, I definitely saw the feet pointing forward, I feel like. And you said the same thing. So like, I don't think we're crazy. I could rewatch it, I guess, and find out. But
then there's definitely another moment where you see the feet pointing the appropriate direction for Gabriel being a backwards person. So it's like, because the first time they started showing Gabriel running, I was like, this is unintentionally hilarious. It is the funniest to see someone running at full speed and have it just look like someone running backwards at full speed is super fucking, it's just the funniest visual in the world. But yeah, then other times the feet face forward. I just want more. I just want more of the backwards person. This is like a great, during like the scene, my thief was the scene in the police station where Gabriel is just fucking ripping people to shreds. It was amazing to just see this, like, I think new horror icon just lay into people. And I was thinking, like, this is a great Halloween costume. This is such a fun Halloween costume where you get yourself a mask of Madison's face and you wear that on the back of your head. And then you get like a wig and you just drape it and you do a little monster mask on your front and you try to figure out how to make yourself a backwards person. It's so much fun.
It's super cool. The movement in that scene, that's when I was like, okay, I feel like it's been weird so far. But in that scene, it was like crazy. Like the way she's crawling is crazy. It like seemed to justify a lot of like the weirdness earlier. And gosh, the fight scenes are just crazy. I mean, that's the kind of like blood and gore that I like, is not like eyes getting gouged out. I want arms getting cut off, you know?
Yeah.
Like dudes getting stabbed through the chest with what looks like, you know, I should have done this for like a when did you know, but when did you know they were going to get that like sword thing from the trophy? The second I saw that trophy, I was like, this is going to be the murder weapon going forward. I mean, it's too perfect. There's a sword on top of a trophy. Probably a bad move for whoever's making these trophies. It's like just begging to be a murder weapon.
Oh my God.
Using a real sword in there. I don't know if this is a thief necessarily, but like, what do you think of the overall premise? Like that reveal is great. That might be my thief, is like the pace of the movie and like all these reveals I think are awesome. It's so cool. I was on my toes the whole time. What do you think of like the reveal ultimately that this is like a parasitic twin that is like attached to her and their decision to ultimately just like push it into her head? Like, what is that about?
I love it. It's fascinating to me that Madison has managed to go her entire life without her adoptive sister ever seeing her back. They must have never gone swimming. Her back has got to be scarred to fucking hell, dude. When they were showing the scene of Gabriel being excised from her, it was like a major operation. This was not like a little parasitic twin. I mean, he had fucking arms. He had like a rib cage. It was crazy. I love it. It's bonkers. I was screaming when they showed the surgeon shoving Gabriel's face into her brain and sealing up the skull around it. It's just not how anything works. It's just absolutely not how anything on this planet works. But for the purposes of this movie, it's perfect. And the idea that Gabriel emerges by like her skull cracking and shifting and Gabriel's face comes out. Oh my God. I'm such a huge fan.
It's such an old school horror idea in my mind, presented in such like a new school modern way. But it seems like a shitty kind of like 60s premise or something like that, like where somebody's, because the head like seals back up like perfectly. There's no blood. There's no line in her hair. It's just like, it seems like the kind of thing that they would like cut away from, you know, or like they cut to an animatronic of like something squeezing out of the head. And then this is a different character. And then like when it's closed, it's a different thing. It just seems like a very old school like horror thing presented in like the most fun modern way. I don't understand how it is it's so dangerous to like cut a face off of the back of her head, but it's like safer to compress her brain by pushing all of it into her skull. Yeah. Like these are not good doctors. I wouldn't trust any of them with any of this. I think this is my thief that I remembered this. And maybe this is super sad. The most brutal part of the whole movie to me is like the violence between the lead and her husband. And the moment when the husband slams her head into the wall, my mouth, I was so shook. I mean, it was like one of the most violent things I've ever seen. And I immediately was like, oh, this movie is going to be good. Like,
oh my God.
not like because of that, but the way they did it, it was so brutal and the impact was so powerful. And I was like, had such an emotional, like visceral response to it. And there was like blood on it's so violent, man. And so gruesome.
Yeah, I'm cringing thinking about it.
I mean, it's disgusting. It was so violent and horrible that I was like, if they did this, if they presented this moment like this, then what else are we going to see in this? But like it for some reason, the way that was presented to us, I had so much trust in the director going forward. And I was like, I have to know what else happens. They made this thing so impactful that like, I just think they're going to there's going to be more impactful stuff going forward was kind of my thought.
God, her husband is, I mean, just an all time fucking scumbag. Some of his lines just so hard to listen to. I mean, for the first person to die in a horror movie, could not be rooting for that death more.
100%. Such a shitty guy. I mean, gosh, it's such a I was going to say it's a fun trope, but it's not fun, of just like the husband or whoever just saying the shittiest fucking thing you can possibly like just blaming her for all their miscarriages and being like, you can't do this to me anymore. And it's like, oh my God, you are a villain, the likes of which we will not see again in this film. I can't wait for you to die. This is going to be an easy first death. It was crazy.
Oh, definitely. Hey, Gabriel's the hero of this movie to me just for killing that guy. That guy is 100%. The real villain of Malignant.
100% he's the villain.
Hashtag Gabriel was right.
I'm going to buy that shirt. Okay, I was picturing it. So if we make that shirt, it says Gabriel was right on the front, and then it's Gabriel's face on the back of the shirt.
Yeah. Or it's just Gabriel's arms giving a thumbs up.
But it's his pinkies.
Oh, that'd be sick. And it's like a blacklight shirt, so you can't see it until you go into a blacklight thing, and then you're like, Gabriel?
Yeah, but wait, it wouldn't be his pinkies. It is his thumbs. They're like backwards.
Well, for Gabriel's actual hands, his hands were like normal.
Yeah, his hands were up, but they were like backwards. But was he like, I don't know. It was just weird. It was very weird, but very fun.
All right. Reckless speculation.
So is there anything to recklessly speculate about?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. This was some of the most fun I had when thinking about this movie, is trying to figure out what's going to happen next. So, reckless speculation for this thing. This movie absolutely gets a sequel. I can't for the life of me figure out what they're going to do. I mean, how can they possibly top it? I'm thinking like some options here. Secret sibling. There's a sibling that they never knew that they had. maybe somehow Gabriel gets its own body, or infests somebody else's body. Like maybe in the sequel, Gabriel can just like burst out of people in random places, like fucking Quado from Total Recall.
I think with a horror sequel like this, you either like one, which I don't think they should ever do, is just over explain what happened in the first one. Like then they go to the hospital and they're like, well, there's actually more kids like this. And then they do it. And then like that, it's just like, oh, so this fun, weird thing is being over explained. And now I don't like the first one as much. I don't really want that. I think this villain is like, the imagery is crazy enough. Like the movement is crazy enough that this in my mind feels like a Freddy or like a Jason or like a, Michael Myers, where it's like, oh, this could be like an iconic killer. And it would be fun. I don't know how you exactly get to that place, but it would be cool to just see like a Halloween style slasher film with this character in it. I don't know how you do that exactly. I don't know how you pull that off exactly, but that's what I would like to see, is like this guy just being the main villain, a bunch of people trying to hunt it down and failing miserably.
Oh, I got a pitch. What if Madison finally has a baby and then suspects that Gabriel passed into her baby?
I mean, that's great.
And you get like a child Gabriel. Like
Gabriel's
a 4 or 5 year old Gabriel. Yeah.
I mean, that's
like a little
so
backwards
good.
moving 5-year-old.
I mean, that's a really good idea. That's a great idea. I wonder how they could like speed it up somehow, or like, gosh, yeah, even a kid, if their kid just started learning how to walk, but he started walking backwards.
Oh my God. Yes.
Like he does everything backwards because that's how like Gabriel has been like processing. Like that's how Gabriel's used to the bodies moving or something.
Oh my God, that's perfect. What if the kid has some kind of a thing where they have to have like an implant in their head, right? Like some kind of like even if it's as simple as like a hearing aid. Boom. Hearing aid. The kid has like a speak and spell, and Gabriel starts talking to the kid through the speak and spell, and then is able to like electrically jump into the kid's hearing aid and control the kid via the hearing aid.
I mean, if a kid had a hearing aid, like it seems like Gabriel would be able to just like talk to him through the hearing aid and like be in his head like that.
I think we did it. I think we cracked.
I mean, that could be awesome. Let's end on this. Do you think that Madison has been suppressed at the end, or do you think Gabriel has been suppressed?
I think Gabriel has been suppressed because that was a really, 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 really big cage that she put him in. Really big cage. But I think Gabriel has to find his way out.
But do you think that could have been a trick that Gabriel played on her mentally? Because at the end of the movie, they do something. They do like kind of a wide shot. They have something like flicker or something like that. And it makes me think that maybe they have the power to play tricks on each other and put each other into scenarios like where they're trapped and just watching. And she plays this like mental trick on him where she locks him up. What if he is tricking her into thinking that she locked him up and that her sister is safe and that her mother loves her? And really, she's in like this utopia in the back of his head while Gabriel's just out there murdering people.
I mean, I would love that. That's fantastic. I'll take it. I'd watch that movie. I'd watch that sequel.
Okay, good. We did it. We landed in that. We're ready for a sequel. That's the biggest endorsement you can possibly give something, right?
Absolutely, we are.
Okay, so that's our podcast.
Give me more.
That's our episode for today. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate it as always. Give us a rate and review wherever you can. 5 stars, 5 stars. Kevin, anything you want to say?
No, just go watch this movie again. I want to find all the hidden things. I'm so excited to show this movie to people that haven't seen it yet.
It's so good. It's so awesome. I love it. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.